They may forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. Growing up, I was always searching for some sense of belonging, but never found it, mainly due to my white blonde hair where the rest of my family had medium to dark hair. We have a Hispanic background, but I never looked a bit of it. I loved the attention that I got because of my blonde hair and the privileges that I had growing up, and you would have thought that all the positive looks and comments would boost my self-esteem, but in reality, it backfired. My family would turn around and talk about all the blonde jokes and how blondes are just for looks, and I started to believe them and the internalized depression about blonde. This made me feel like I would never look good enough for anyone. Since I was young, I struggled with being fit. I was never extremely big, but I did have jealousy towards my sisters because of their ease to stay thin and fit, like those in the magazines that I always wanted to look like. It has opened my eyes to the weight issue in America and what is going on today. I feel like after all this struggle, I can really look past weight on others and concentrate on their inside. I will admit, however, that I did receive my fantastic eyebrows from my mom, along with their great shape so that I never have to deal with tweezing and waxing in order to look through. Yes, I must thank her every day because as strange as it may sound, it is a big part of my career as a cosmetologist. Historical reflection. As I have grown older, I am beginning to understand that some of the struggles as a child are helping me to deal with some of the struggles you have as a grown-up. Growing up, my parents were concerned that something was wrong with me because each time we sat down to read, I would get frustrated and cry. As early as first grade, they would ask my teachers if they thought there was something wrong with my learning. My mom was not satisfied with the answer that she got with the Austin School District, so she moved us to Round Rock ISD. My self-esteem was dropping and continues to be extremely low today because of my inability to read fast or learn like others. It was there that I met my 5th grade homeroom teacher. After the first month of school, my parents set up a conference with this teacher to discuss their concerns. It was then that the teacher told them that she had noticed some abnormalities and thought that they should get me tested. She told them that I was very bright and that most dyslexic kids were, and that's when I was diagnosed with dyslexia. I spent many afternoons in tutoring or at home struggling with homework, especially English. I was teased and made fun of for the hard times that I had in class, and even more when I was pulled out of my class for tutoring. While it is frustrating, I have learned to cope and not let it get me down. As of today, I'm still self-conscious of reading in public, but I am now able to understand the feelings of those kids that do have learning disabilities and encourage them to continue to work hard and be proud of their improvement. My parents are always encouraging me to get an education so that I was able to succeed financially and feel fulfilled. I went to get my associate's degree, returned for my bachelor's, and now my master's. Through all of this, I have been able to encourage my students that do think and learn a little differently that they too can succeed. It is through this disability that I have become a better educator and able to encourage my students and peers. 2 days before I started 7th grade, my intoxicated uncle and I were playing in the pool when he decided that making a diving board with a piece of plywood would be a great idea. I was the anchor while he jumped off. The board came up and hit me in the face and knocked out my front tooth and all the bone around it. I began 7th grade with 62 stitches and no front tooth. It was the beginning of a very hard time with me, with many surgeries. Every time that I went to school after a surgery, I would have school friends make fun of me and talk about me behind my back. Even my own sister, whom I looked up to, would not go out with me in public. I've never quite recovered from this and felt like I was good enough for any of my family, any of my friends, or any of our relationships. This has created a stumbling block in my life, and it is shown through my LSI for approval and avoidance. I am now able to comfort those students that may have any physical differences and encourage their classmates to look past these differences. My mother has been a huge inspiration in my life. She is an amazing woman. I got to experience her going back to school for her master's and now doctorate degree, and teaching at various colleges. She was always talking about how much she cares for her students and how each of them have affected her. She believes in each and every one of her students, and it shows when she comes home. I was able to observe this when growing up, and while I started out as a cosmetology instructor, I found that I have a lot of the same feelings towards my students as she has for her. Firstly, I am there for them as a teacher and to make them the best cosmetologists that they can be. And secondly, I am there for them. Growing up, my parents instilled a strong sense of family in which I have learned in many different ways. One of those that really stuck with me is eating dinner at the dinner table as a family. No matter what we are doing around the house or in our lives, it was very important to sit down at the table, as Trumbull would say, as a collectivistic family and eat and connect. This is the time that we would reflect as a family on our days. I never really thought anything of this, but as I moved out, I started to realize how much I loved this time each day. It was a time that I got to release my upset feelings and share my happy times. I enjoyed the time that I got to learn about my family and those around me and support their lives. I knew I would always keep this up as I grew my own family. But one thing I did not know, it was not something typical in every family, which created a problem when my husband and I got married. He grew up in an individualistic family that eating together at the dinner table was not a part of our day. Another way that my family would instill family is visiting my grandmother and the rest of my family very often. It was extremely common to have many members of the family stop by at any time of the day for any period of time. When we would cook, my grandmother would tell me we would cook for at least double the amount because you never knew who was coming over, and everyone, family and friends, were welcome at any point in time. You come and go as you please, with no need to knock at the door or have an invite to come over. I loved this open, friendly, collectivistic feel. It really clashed with my views that I had of family when my husband introduced me to his family for the first time. I got very offended when he had to call and set up an appointment with them to go to their house to get something. But I can now see that what is completely normal for one person can be very offensive to another, and I have learned to not take this so personal through these. Having to deal with the way he and I were raised helps me to deal with different types of people and cultures that I have encountered. I have had many interactions with different types of people in my life. I'm a white American girl with a Hispanic background. I believe that each person should have the same opportunities that everybody else has. I do realize that many people have racism, sexism, and ageism happening to them each day. I live in a predominantly white middle-class neighborhood and area. I have white privilege pretty much anywhere that I go, just as McIntosh talked about in Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack. Growing up, I was not truly aware of this privilege. I just thought that this is how it was and there was nothing to question. I did find it odd that my parents did not show any prejudice to anyone different than us, but they never really had friends from different ethnic or racial backgrounds. I always enjoyed having friends of different backgrounds, but we knew dating certain races would have created major conflict in the house, which made me aware of their prejudices, just as Trumbull talks of. This always bothered me because I tried not to look at their skin color and instead look at their values and their personalities. I value my relationships a lot, and I have found that I have a lot of acquaintances that I call friends when I'm in conversation, but yet only a handful of really good friends. I hope that those that know me say that I'm a good friend and that I'm loving, joyful, and fun-going. Having a true friend for a lifetime is a very rare and unique opportunity. I have found that when I was working as a cosmetology instructor, the school was a Hispanic family-owned business. My owner was a 35 to 45-year-old Mexican woman. I received my cosmetology license and instructor's license at her school. I was hired at a lower pay than many other instructors that had no Paul Mitchell background. As Hinchy would say, I participated in constructive consciousness when I did not feel like I had the right to challenge or confront my supervisor. I was trying to be on the Advanced Academy Paul Mitchell team, where I would travel around and teach the other Paul Mitchell instructors. I was qualified for this position about after 6 months of teaching, and yet I never received the position. I have felt that she was bitter at me because of my age, race, and ability to get to the places I wanted to much quicker than she was. I was passing my certifications on my first try where it was taking her a few tries. She could have felt that I was much more needed back at my home school rather than traveling around, or just not ready for the responsibility. I find when I'm in situations like this, I run away so that I don't get hurt or hurt anybody. While doing this project, it has made me look back on my life in a different way. I can see how subtle things can affect your life without you knowing it until you look back at your life, not as memories, but in a critical way. Having done this, I've come to understand that I have to accept me and like me for who I am, and until I do that, no one has yet fully realized the wealth of sympathy, kindness, and generosity hidden in the soul of the child. The effort of every true education should be to unlock this treasure. I believe that knowledge is the vessel for students to get down the river. I believe that education provides the knowledge needed for life experiences. Education is the act of acquiring general knowledge, preparing oneself intellectually for mature life, and skills obtained or developed by the learning process. I believe that every individual has the ability to learn, and a teacher's job is to provide the tools and direction to allow individuals to be successful. I believe that teacher is really just the facilitator, just as in the ancient philosophy movement believes. Because of this conviction, I take my role as a teacher very seriously. I believe that each student learns differently. It is my job as a teacher to assess these learning styles of my students and incorporate appropriate teaching methods that address their learning needs. I also believe education is best received when you are having fun, and it is my job to make the learning fun and engaging. I commit myself to reaching out to students with different learning disabilities, and my autoethnography really enhanced this dedication. I want to show them how important they are and that their ability to learn is within their confidence. As critical theorist Horkheimer would say, we will give them the education needed to liberate human beings from the circumstances that enslave them. My profession is cosmetology, and successful hair care and treatments require hands-on practice. So many of my teaching techniques include this. This is the way that I bring the imperious belief that experiential learning allows students to be more involved in their own learning into education. Choose something that interests you and learn something new about it.